everybody. Hello, hello. I am Markos Moulitsas. I'm the founder of Daily Kos, not cause, not daily knockouts. And if anybody here is Iranian, I know what Kos means in Farsi. You do not need to remind me. Don't look it up. Don't Google it. We're celebrating our 20th year anniversary right now, and so glad you guys got to celebrate with us last night. Did you guys have a good time? So I'm in awe sitting here, standing before you guys, knowing how hard you're working on the front lines on our battle against a nihilistic Republican Party that is hell-bent on destroying everything that is great about our democracy. And I know we're tired. We survived 4 years of Trump, and he doesn't want to leave, and we got to keep fighting. I know it's hard, but once again, we're facing, yet again, the most important election of our lifetime. Trademark, copyright. But I will say, of all the most important elections of our lifetime, I don't think we've ever seen such a wide disparity in potential outcomes between victory and defeat, because our democracy is on the ballot. So before we talk a little bit more about November, I really want to take a moment to reflect on how far we've come the last 20 years. Because it's really easy to get sort of trapped in a moment and get angry at what Joe Biden said or didn't say, or Chuck Schumer, or Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, right? We have lots of reasons to be frustrated, but we also have to understand that we've really come a long way, because the Democratic Party of 20 years ago, when this movement began, Daily Kos, and by extension, Netroots Nation, which was an outgrowth of the Daily Kos community, the reason was there was no real Democratic Party. There was no progressive voices in media, which was dominated at the time, of course, by television, print, and radio, the dark ages. And so Daily Kos sort of filled a market niche, a market need. And from that, we started organizing, and we started talking about how we become a better Democratic Party, because it was awful at the time. Some of you are too young to know. It was awful, right? In 2004, Howard Dean was considered radical because he argued that he represented the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. That was considered radical, because we had wings. He was drummed out of the Democratic presidential primaries because he supported civil unions. Do you guys remember civil unions? This was the fake marriage, but we couldn't say marriage because it might offend some people, because Democrats would say marriage was between a man and a woman. Marriage is a man and a woman. So Barack Obama gets elected, hope. And you think it's bad now that we have to deal with Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema. There was like 12 of them in the Senate. Joe Lieberman, Max Baucus, Ben Nelson, Bill Nelson, Mary Landrieu, Mark Pryor, Claire McCaskill. I mean, it was impossible. We had 59, we had 60 at one point, and still couldn't get anything accomplished. So we've come a long way. It's a much more unified party ideologically and in purpose. And I think we need to take a moment to really appreciate that we made that happen. Even things like Act Blue, which Democrats thought that Citizens United would destroy them. And it didn't, because they were able to shift to being people-powered, not corporate-powered. So we have come a long way, but it came at a cost, because all those terrible Democrats that we talk about, they all represented rural, white, agricultural, conservative-leaning states. They're gone. They represented places like Arkansas and Louisiana, Nebraska. They're gone. So now we have a 50-50 Senate, which is not a democratic institution. We all know that. 20% of the population have 50 seats. So we already have to deal with the structure of our flawed democracy. And we do so as we head into, once again, the most important election of our lifetime. And like I said, the difference between winning and losing is we know what happens if we lose. And I'm not talking just the Senate and the House. I'm talking Secretary of States, governorships, attorney generals. This all matters. If we win, it's much different. All we need is to get rid of the filibuster, DC statehood, potentially Puerto Rican statehood, expanding the Supreme Court, real voter protections, ban to partisan gerrymandering. I mean, I'm not talking issues. I'm talking democracy. That's what's on the ballot. And in a typical midterm election, we know the conventional wisdom. The conventional wisdom is that the party in power loses seats. And history tells us that it's an average about 30 House seats. And most of the political punditry, that's what they just assume, oh, it's going to be a red wave, red wave, red wave, red wave. And if you look at the numbers last year, they were pretty bleak. Republicans were outperforming their 2020 numbers by about 9 points. That's definitely red wave territory. It was about 6 last year. The beginning of this year was about 9, first few months. Talking elections like Virginia, which we lost. We almost lost New Jersey. If New Jersey's on the competitive, you know we're in trouble. And then a funny thing happened. Actually, before I get to the funny thing, why are midterm elections so tough on the party in power? It's because it's a referendum on the president. Very simple. And no president can win that referendum because you got to promise the world to get elected, right? 1 million 10-point plans. You got to put them on the website. Nobody reads them, but you got to have them. And then you get elected president, and you realize that president isn't an autocrat in this country. We have to go through Congress. You got a Supreme Court. It's difficult to make anything happen. You can never make things happen. So already, you're losing that way. Then you have that president's supporters. Big chunk of them, they're not that engaged politically. They did their job. They voted for president. Now they can politically sleepwalk for the next 4 years until the next election. Then there's people like us who are paying attention, and we're like, God damn it, why didn't this happen? Why did Biden say that? Or why didn't he say more about this? And then we start picking everything apart. And that sort of demobilizes, demoralizes. It's not fun, right? You're like fighting the guy you want to like. And that's why Joe Biden's at like 38% approval rating. It's not conservative. They already hated him from day one. People like us being like, ugh. So that's usually, in any real election, that should have been enough. That would have been enough to say, okay, this is going to be a rough year. Might as well call it right now. Why even bother having the election? But I was arguing a year ago that this was not going to be a typical midterm election. And anomalies happen. It happened after 9/11 with George Bush, when things are so different or so dramatically, the norms are changed and the environment's so different that maybe we can't look to history to determine what's going to happen. And so, I wish I had water up here. Funny thing happened then. It's Donald Trump never got off the stage. And you can't have a referendum on the president if the old president won't get the fuck out of the way. And it's even worse than that. It's not just he wants to be on stage, and thanks so much. It's not so much that he won't leave the stage, it's that he's criming his way on stage. And he's forcing Republicans to stand by him on that stage. And then an even bigger thing happened. Something that I think may actually change our electoral landscape in ways that we haven't seen in decades. So by context, conservatives have the single-issue voter, right? They have two types. They have the evangelical abortion, anti-abortion voter, and they have the Second Amendment gun nut. They will vote for every election, no matter when it's at, up and down the ballot, and they don't care who the candidate is, and they don't care about anything else that's happening at that time. Single issue. We may look today at the evangelical support for Donald Trump, and you may think, oh, yeah, they were always with him, but they weren't. They were with Ted Cruz in the primary. They did not like him for the same reason you would assume they wouldn't like him, because he's a disgusting moral creature. Yet, once he won the nomination, all that went away. The candidate didn't matter, nothing else mattered, just the fact that he would give them anti-abortion judges. And it worked. They did what they were supposed to do. We haven't had that. Our choice movement has tried for decades to have that, but people didn't believe him. You know, the boy who cried wolf keeps saying that Republicans are going to take away our right to choose, but they never do. And they didn't really want to. We know that. They didn't really want to. They thought it was the greatest electoral wedge. What they wanted is for the Supreme Court just maybe hack away a little bit more at abortion rights. Just chip away at the edges like they kept doing year after year after year. But obviously they did not do that. And Dobbs has changed that equation. And we're seeing in the data, in the numbers, that something big is happening. There is a shift underway. And we're seeing that in the elections that happened after Dobbs was leaked. Remember, Republicans were +9 before Dobbs. After Dobbs was leaked, we've had 11 special elections, and they were Democrat +3. That means the Democratic candidates were outperforming Joe Biden +3. And if you look at the Senate races and the governor races and the Secretary of State's races that matter this year, they all matter, but that are particularly important, it's the presidential battlegrounds, right? It's Florida, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. In fact, the only Senate battleground that isn't a presidential battleground is Ohio, weirdly. So this actually, when we're at a razor's edge, ±3, you shift that +3 on our direction, everything is in play. Now, here's the thing. After Dobbs was released officially, there had been 3 special elections, and in those 3 special elections, the Democrats had moved +6. And if you're looking at the registration numbers, here in Pennsylvania, Tom Bonnier of TargetSmart has been tweeting about this. I highly recommend you can check it out. He's been tweeting about the voter registration numbers, and it is absolutely dramatic. We're talking about heavily female, and even the men who are registering to vote are 2-to-1 Democratic. About half of them are under the age of 25. Something's happening here. So it is our job, my job, your job, is to take advantage of this gift. And I know it sounds crass to talk about Dobbs as a gift, but long term, we got to think long term. This is an opportunity. Because not only did they get rid of Roe v. Wade, but they also, Clarence Thomas basically laid out the agenda. Oh yeah, this is just abortion, but we're coming after contraception, we're coming after same-sex marriage, we're coming after sodomy. He's basically saying that all our privacy rights are under the gun. And so this is creating what is clearly a groundswell. We have to write it, because if we do that, we talked about what we can do. We expand the Supreme Court. We have a Congress that will pass, that will codify Roe protections in law, and a Supreme Court that will then uphold it. That is what we are fighting for. So that is your job. That is my job. I'm not only in absolute awe of all of you and the work that you do, but I'm supremely confident that we're going to win this election. Thank you so much.